And thank you. And especially if you wanted some kind of like thing to put on your resume, totally fine, totally normal, acceptable, especially for LinkedIn and stuff. I know you're all trying to learn the skill for a reason to have a career in UX or just to expand your skill set. So certificate's always nice. If you have any questions about that, let us know. But pretty much we are doing it based on the actual Figma file itself. So I think UX Club is going to go through the Figma. We're going to check that you actually have evidence of, following along our classes. So it can be your own project or it can just be like doing the activities in the class. For example, if we like go through this Figma and we like see your name consistently and we see some kind of screens consistently, that's pretty much more than enough for you to get the certificate, at least for 5 of the classes, if you're able to do it. If you weren't able to attend the class, totally fine. You'll have time, go watch the videos and then show that you are working on it on this file. So just make sure that whatever you're working on, if you just put it on this file in that specific class that you were watching the video or attending, you are good to go to get the certificate. Any quick questions you guys wanted to unmute and ask? I'll give exactly 20 seconds. Okay, not 20 seconds. Just kidding. You can interrupt me if you do. But okie dokie. That's all about certificates. A quick recap of last class. So variables is definitely the most complicated thing to learn on Figma right now. So don't feel bad if you weren't able to follow along, or if it was too confusing, or if you just forgot everything. To be honest, I tend to forget over time too. The more I keep doing variables, it feels new every time. But remember, it is a really, really cool feature, especially as you're doing testing and you're trying to make things as close to development as possible. You can do fancy things like this to add things to cart and actually see numbers change. You can see real customer interaction. So, video is always up there. Feel free to go and learn variables again if it was hard. And coming back to the whole design journey and design process, hopefully Figma class gave you an insight into how design works as well. Because if you see the complexity of the classes that we've gone into directly relates to the double diamond process too. By the time you got to variables, you can probably build something as close to what a developer can build for you. And the initial stages of lo-fi, hi-fi are what you do usually when you get started in the initial discovery and ideating phase anyways. So throughout this course, we hope that you've also gotten an insight into what UX is and how Figma can be beneficial for you in your journey as a UX designer. And there's obviously a lot of other tools and resources too, like Figma Slides, which is what I'm using right now to make this presentation. Um, and then we have FigJam. So yeah, Figma is great. We love Figma as a company itself. Lastly, throughout this class, we've shown you snippets of screens of this entire prototype that we wanted to be able to build with you. So if you were able to follow along on every single one of the class using all the different things that we've taught you, you should be able to build this exact prototype. Probably not the variables part if you're not there yet, but all of these interactions and me being able to actually type my name into it, that's variables. And if we do, I guess it's not working fully right now. I have the full prototype. Yep, the habit. So I won't walk you through the entire prototype, but you know, all throughout this class is what we set this up for so that you can actually build a proper habit tracker app. And we split the screens throughout the class depending on the complexity of the class. So hopefully, by the end of this class, if you still want to have some takeaways and continue doing it, I would say a good project for you, maybe for helping you get started on your portfolio or on your own project, would be to first build this entire app. And if you come up with your own idea, you can always go to this app for reference and be like, oh, wait, how did you prototype the screen? And you can see how we did it. We'll probably send you a link to this full prototype within the Discord, so you can always access that and reference and remember how to do these things. So, getting into the actual topic of this very suspenseful special topics class, it's nothing super surprising. We looked at the feedback and we saw that a lot of you guys needed help in lo-fi, hi-fi, prototyping, components, and auto layout. So that's where most of the topics were kind of split. So I tried to come up with an activity for us to get started on that and just kind of recap what we've talked about. So that's what today's class is going to be, but make it a little fun and interesting and to just kind of test the waters too. The first, let me send a link to this actually. The first 15 minutes of the class, I'm going to put a timer and ask that you guys, something in the chat. 1 second. Okay. Here's the link to the file. Sent it in the chat if you're not there already. So yeah, usual routine. I think most of you guys kind of remember the names, pretty familiar. So if you guys want to just go ahead, claim your spot, and add your name, give you a few minutes to do that. I'm gonna take a little section for myself too. Okay, while you guys do that, let me explain what we're about to do for the next 15 minutes. So I will set a timer for 15 minutes, and on the left-hand side of your section, I have this guide for you just in case. I don't know how confident everyone is on each of this part, because I know that a lot of people did mention the more first class things like hi-fi and lo-fi. So if you need the guide, you can use it. If not, for 15 minutes, I have only included a screenshot, so no layers, no hints, no nothing. I want you guys to try to build a screen from scratch, from memory, or just by thinking how you can build it. I did include some assets for you here, so if you remember how to go and grab your own iPhone frame, that is good. If not, I have instructions right here if you want to grab your own iPhone frame. Basically, just build a screen as much as possible. If you get stuck and you want to refer to any instructions, I've included some guidelines over here on the left, and you can always type things in the chat and unmute and ask us as well. I've included this little wavy thing because it's a little hard to create with the pen tool, so I included that for you guys, and then I have the 3 icons as well. But we pretty much just want to build a screen in 15 minutes, if that's doable. So any questions before we get started? And after we do that, I'm gonna give you guys another walkthrough of auto layout and components, because those were the next most asked requested topic. So any questions? Okay. We'll be right here for 15 minutes. If you feel like you're just stuck and you just want to pull us into a breakout room, feel free to let us know. With that being said, let me figure out if I can start a Zoom timer. Do you know how to do that version? If not, I'll just maintain my own actual. Okay, it's 8:14, which is perfect. So yeah, you guys can get started. I'll check in between if you guys have questions, and I will stop sharing so we can play some music while you guys work through this. If you finish early, I challenge you guys to try to explore doing it with auto layout and components too. So if you finish doing it, I would say make these using auto layout. So there's 2 ways. You could just manually place them together, or you could use auto layout, right? So if you remember how to do that as well, just go as advanced as you can and use the entire 15 minutes, and then I will come back. And if you have questions and you want to write them down on the side, you can do that, or you could type it in the chat as well. Now I will stop talking. Okay, Varshini, could you share your screen and put some music, and I will just stay here. So it looks like we had a person join just now. Just a quick summary, we are doing quick. Just a quick summary for the person that just joined. I've basically given everyone 15 minutes to try to replicate this entire screen. This is just an image because I wanted you guys to build it custom on your own to as close as possible. You can choose your own colors and your own style, but the elements can be the same. If you get stuck, I have a guide on the left to kind of help you. And if you finish early, I encourage you to explore auto layout and components, just kind of jog your memory, and feel free to type any questions on the chat or ask us anytime. And put the music back on. Thank you. Just a quick reminder, you have about 7 more minutes. If you need more time, please just react to the message on Zoom or raise your hand, whatever, just let me know so I can get a response. If not, just keep going. pretty it looks like. You guys are close. Should we take 3 minutes or should we continue? Okay, I'll give 3 minutes. I think you guys are active. Okay, okay. Hi, mom. Um, if you guys want to continue, you can after class. So for now, I will start talking. Okay. So if you guys can just watch my screen just for a few minutes. So I just wanted to highlight a couple things quickly, just by kind of watching you guys. I wanted to make sure that as you were building it, I know you guys didn't mention any questions, which is good, but just in case you were thinking about this in your head too, um, when you have a blank screen and I hope you guys were using frames and not rectangles. I will be angry if you use rectangles. The reason I say so is because frames is needed for auto layout and it just helps you organize your elements properly. So when you guys drag out things and put it in your frame, I'll just change the color of this for now. The way I would do it with auto layout, I just want to show this to you guys quick. So say that I already made one. I'm gonna add my corner radius for this. It's too much. Okay. After I make one, just to make sure that I don't have to like do the same action, make another one and position it and align it, I'm gonna teach you a little trick. If you just on the first one that you make that you're happy with, if you just go Shift A and you set the auto layout, you see it's already adding padding and all that for you, which is great. But now, if you look at this whole frame has auto layout now, which is good. But if I add another auto layout on top of it, so I'm going to do Shift A again, now you see that it's added padding around the entire element. So then if I double click and I take this and copy paste it 3 times, it's a little more faster than having to do everything. And now what I would do is I would grab this icon Command C, and then I'd click on the water droplet and I would right click and select paste to replace. And it pastes it and replaces it in the same exact position. I can do that for this as well. Double click, right click, and paste to replace, or I don't know what that is. Shift Command R, I don't know, but paste to replace basically. And there, I finished that in 20 seconds. So just some quick, fast hacks. And if you're trying to make a circle and if you forgot, just in case, if you want to make the circle round and perfectly round, just hold Shift while you drag the circle and it'll always be perfectly round. And then there's a couple of other tricks I wanted to mention. Yeah, I think that's all. I think this is pretty easy, right? You just make the frame and then you do a stroke instead of a fill. So yeah, the stuff is laid out here. Now, let's take this entire screen and add auto layout for each of the different elements in the whole thing. So before I do that, I just wanted to point out, I missed adding the circle here. Well, any questions on this so far? So I just used auto layout to start aligning things before I even, make many copies. And paste to replace is my best friend because once you fix the design for one thing and you're making it multiple times, it just helps you keep the same position. Okie dokie. So if you guys remember auto layout, first of all, the way to do it is Shift A, as I just showed you guys. And remember your padding is on the outside. So we have 10 increments of padding here, and we have 10 in between. So if you look at this panel, there's a lot of controls, but I'll just recap that really quick. We have our layout arrangement, which this one is a vertical layout because as you saw, the items are moving down vertically. And this part, the gap, is also it can be adjusted. You can set it to auto or you can set it to a specific number. Say that I want a bigger number, I can just type in 20. And then the padding is, as you can see, it's already getting highlighted. It's like 10, 10 on both sides, and I'm just going to leave it like that. Within the actual element itself, it's Figma is smart, so it added your padding according to the element that you have. So if yours had a circle when you did Shift A, your radius is probably bigger and your padding is probably not 114, it's probably like 50 or something because it's accommodating for the circle too. And then when you're trying to change the orientation of the auto layout, so say I take this out for a second. So you can also change the flow. So right now it's a vertical flow. You can also just click on this and do a horizontal flow. But there you would see that's a little hiccup. So this entire thing is called a container, right? So since this container is at fixed width, so it's at the width of 314, it's not going to change. That's why all the elements are adapting to that fixed width. But if I manually change that width, the elements also reappear and change accordingly. But say I wanted the other way. I want these elements to have a fixed width, but I want my container to change according to the elements inside. So let me show you that before. So now when we're doing this vertical layout, I know that I want this to always be a certain width. So if you look at the setting here right now, it says fill, which means that it's just going to take up the space of the entire container. So you see those little red lines? It's showing you that it's filling up the entire horizontal space of the container. But I know that I want it to be a certain fixed dimension. So I'm just going to manually adjust that and say that I want it to be 290 and it's adjusted. So let's do that for all of them. So I'm just going to hold Shift, select both. And in your auto layout panel, we're going to change it to 290. And then this entire container now, which I'm just going to rename it container as I'm talking, I want this to hug the contents, which means that since this is a fixed width, whatever that width is, I want it to hug accordingly. So I'm just going to say that the container is going to hug. So you see those arrows going in. So there's extra spacing on the right side if you saw, because we changed the size of the elements. So it's now just going to hug that and get rid of that space. Now, when I click the whole thing and I do a horizontal, it's perfect. Because the size of your elements are preserved, but your container is changing. Sometimes there will be situations where you want your container to be the same, but you want the size of the elements to change. So just when you're, it's a tricky concept, but when you're thinking about what you want to say stay fixed, that's what that fixed setting is. So if you know the size of something and you want it to stay fixed, then that maybe it's the container or it's the elements that stay fixed. If something else is supposed to adapt accordingly, the only question is, should it fill if it's the elements inside, sometimes the elements have to fill the space of the container, so they have to adapt to the existing space, that's fill. If you want the container to adapt to the elements, it's hug. Any questions on those definitions so far? And it gets a little confusing, but if you just play with the settings, you'll know. Just keep in mind that fixed is a set specific width, and hug and fill is for adapt. So however you want to adapt it to. So that's a quick auto layout right there. But I also want to say I like adding auto layout to each of the different elements of my page too. So on your page right now, if you want to just take a second, so you can go back to your screen and I'm going to show you how to add auto layout for every single one of these elements. So very simple. I'm just going to select the first text layer, hold shift, select the next one. And usually when you're doing it in design systems, these kind of spacings will be specified, right? So I'm just going to say that since this is like a section in my app, I want to put Shift A here, and I want the spacing here to be 10. So the gap here can be 10, and that's done. So that's an auto layout. Then select each of your individual tiles that you made, hold Shift A, and you can set any number that you want. I'm going to set 20 for now. So this is how I section my designs too. So when you're doing a lot of UI work, you can always make sure that things look like they're spaced out properly with auto layout because the spacing between the elements should usually stay the same. So for example, technically this should also be 20. Then you know that within each element the spacing is 20, but in between these two auto layout sections, maybe I want to set a spacing of 30. So that clearly separates the sections out for you. So again, you just hold Shift A, and when you click on that little red line, you can adjust the spacing. So that's auto layout right there for you. And I showed you responsiveness, fill and hug as well. Did you guys have any other specific things you wanted me to go over with auto layout? Because that came up a little bit on the feedback form before I go into components and prototyping. Okie dokie. I assume we are all clear on auto layout. Cool. Now for components. So I know you guys all have a specific tile that you've made. I want you to grab that tile and we're going to make it into components. So I'm going to detach this one for now. So all of you should have some sort of tile looking like this. And what I want you to do is go to your right-hand panel, and next to the text frame, you will see these 4 diamonds. So that would be the Create Component button. If you don't see that, you can right-click on the tile and say Create Component. Oh, did it disconnect? Was I disconnected?
You should be fine.
Oh, okay, cool. So when you click on the habit tracker and you right click, you will say create component. And we have these 4 pretty filled diamonds. So that means that you've set it into a component. Now you can go onto your right-hand panel and you will see on the top right here under habit trackers, it'll say add property. So we're going to click on that and we're going to say variant. So again, make it into a component by right-clicking and saying create component. And on the right-hand panel, next to your actual frame, you will see add property, select variant. And this will be the first variant inside your component. So basically, components again are just a way for you to track all the different versions of your specific design. So we'll have like a filled state and a unfilled state, like when we click on it, right? So we're going to just do a first variant on this one, and I'm just going to name all these things. So I'm going to call this state. So on the right-hand side, under properties, we're going to type state. And then when I add another variant, I'll be able to edit the state as well. So come back to your component, click on this plus symbol, and it'll just going to make this bigger so I can see both my numbers. And actually, I like to add auto layout here too, so it's easier. So I'm just going to click on the habit tracker component and do Shift A so that if I need to add more variants, I can just manage it. So again, to add a variant, click on your purple dotted border component and you'll see plus one variant. So just click on the plus and it'll add one. And if you add auto layout, it just organizes your variants better like that. That's all. So I'm just going to delete this sound to variants. Cool. So now click on the first variant, go to your right-hand panel, and we've already renamed it to state, right? Next to the state, it'll say default. Double click on that default and type unfilled. And then go to the second component, or the second variant, sorry. Go to the right-hand panel and you have state, and it'll say stage 2, maybe, or property 2. Double click on that text and type filled. So the first one on the right-hand panel should say unfilled, and the second one will say filled. Let me move this. And now we're actually going to create the filled state. So for this, I want to take this ellipse, and I'm just going to make it bigger. And it doesn't have to be a nice size. We're just filling up the space like that. Okay. And the reason it's not showing up is because if you see here, click on the actual variant, and on the right-hand panel, you will see clip content is selected. If it's not selected, you're going to see that ugly circle ellipse thing show up. Just make sure it's selected. So clip content basically contains everything inside your frame. Any excess stuff, it just clips it. So now that we've done that, I want this filled state to be a different color. So I'm going to click on this variant on the right-hand side. And I'm going to click on the ellipse actually, and it's white. So I'm going to change it to, just gonna click select any color. If yours is different, it's fine. I'm gonna select mine as this color and change the color of the icon to be white. And when you're changing the color of the icon, make sure you're doing it in selection color, not just the fill, because that's what the elements of the icon will, it needs to select everything, right? So just make sure you do selection colors when you change the icon. So I'll give you just 1 minute to make sure everyone's caught up. Filled again? Yes. So if this is how yours looked like, I just clicked on this ellipse right here and just, oh, if that is happening for you, make sure you're actually clicking on just the ellipse and not the entire water frame. So click on and check your left side layers panel to make sure you're only selecting the ellipse and not the entire thing. You just drag it out, just making it big enough to cover the entire tile. That's it. And the reason we're doing this is for the prototype animation, because prototype was also something you guys mentioned in the form, so I'm trying to cover both at the same time. Hopefully that helped. Then you change the color of the ellipse. So again, check your left layers panel that you're only selecting the ellipse and change the colors. And then I'm going to click on the icon and click on selection colors and change it to white. That's how you do the filter. If you're asking for the actual component, so when you make this into a component, so right click, create component, and then on the right-hand panel, you'll see add property plus variant, and then you click on this to add a variant. So that's how you make it into the filled variant. And then on the right-hand panel, I'm just renaming property to say state. And then I'm going to name this to be unfilled, technically, and then this to be filled. That's how you do it. Just double click on the title to name it into filled. Hopefully I answered all the questions there. Cool. So when you click on your entire component, what you should see here on your right hand and
I think you cut out for a second if you can repeat that. Can anyone else hear Sanjana by any chance? Or is it me? Okay.
No, I think she's stuck for me too.
Okay. Then we can wait for a second. Okay, she's just having a few VPN issues. She'll be back very shortly. Fun fact, she does not have a personal laptop, so she uses a work laptop to do all of this. And it uses a VPN, and it has issues sometimes because she refuses to invest in a personal device. Now you all know something more about Sanjana. You're welcome.
sorry guys, my VPN died. Okay, hopefully you guys got the answer to the question about the filled, unfilled state. So I will continue. Um, just make sure that you have the state filled, unfilled, and how are you going to check that this actually works? On your layers panel, you should see the diamonds, which means it's component, and you should see the filled diamond, which means their variant. So I'm going to click on one of these and I'm going to hold Option or Alt on my keyboard. So I see these double arrows. I'm going to drag one out. The reason I say don't copy paste is because sometimes it copies and pastes inside the component. It gets a little messy. So I recommend dragging it out so that it comes out perfectly. So again, hold Alt or Option on your keyboard and select the instance. So select the component to make an instance, and you know you're doing it right if you see a black arrow and a white arrow. And now, on the actual instance, when I right click, I can change between the states with just the click of a button. Now, the last part that you guys requested in the feedback was prototyping. So I'm going to go over that real quick by changing this back to unfilled. Then I'm going to grab it and put it on my own screen. So hopefully you guys were able to make progress on your own screen. If not, feel free to come and grab this. If you want to just work on mine, it's totally fine. I'll leave a copy here. Say that you weren't able to finish your screen, you can just grab mine. And then I'm going to take this instance. Make sure you're only selecting the instance, and you will see a open diamond that means instance. So open diamond is instant, copy it and paste it on your own. Instead of doing pasting, you can paste to replace. Ta-da. So paste to replace, but if your icons are different, you'd have to update your icons again, but luckily I taught you a trick, so it should be fast. I'm going to paste to replace all of these, and then I'm going to click on this icon, the book one, Command C or Control C, go back here. Oh, actually, hang on. So we need to do this for all of the different icons. It's going to take a while to make components for everything. So it's okay. They all can be water droplets for now. Okay. So it's okay if your icons are all the same. It's fine because ideally we have to make 3 components for each of these icons. So we're going to leave it like that. And I'm going to click on the entire frame. I'm just going to drag it back to the size of an actual iPhone, which is 841, the height. So drag it until the height is 841. And on the right-hand panel, make sure that clip content is selected. So again, your iPhone should be stretched out, but I want you to drag it and decrease the height to 841. And on the right-hand panel, make sure clip content is selected. Now, we are just going to go to the right-hand panel under prototype settings. We're going to click on flow starting point. So I'm just going to add this in for now so that we can make sure we can track our little prototype. So click on the plus sign and I'm going to rename mine just so you can access, because we're all in the same file. I would just put your name down. So double click on it, add your name. So again, click on the frame. On the right-hand panel, select prototyping, add a flow starting point, and name it. You can name it right here, or you can name it by double-clicking on the blue label. And I'm again going to select this frame. And on the right-hand side, I think Figma is very smart. So it already set a vertical scrolling for us. So it predicted that since we clipped content and we have items below the fold, so that's very important. If you don't have anything below the fold of your iPhone, vertical scrolling is not going to be enabled. And I can show you an example right here. So look at this iPhone frame. Figma already decided this is no scrolling. If I force it to do vertical, it's giving me that exclamation mark. And it's telling me for scrolling to work, the content needs to be bigger than the frame. So just keep that in mind. So now that we have that set up, I'm going to click on this little mini player. So on your screen, next to the blue tag, you'll see a little play button kind of a thing. Just click on that and it'll open up a iPhone frame. So mine is loading. Cool. Now I'm just doing this to check the scroll. Scroll works perfect. Good. And then for us to be able to change the states by click, we're going to go back to the components and stay in the prototype tab. And you're just going to zoom in until you see this plus sign. So click on one of the variants, possibly the unfilled one. You'll see the blue plus icon and drag it out to the next one. So it'll be a blue prototype node, which is very pretty. And here are the prototype settings. So it should say on tap, change to filled. Again, Figma already figured all this out, and I'll just explain what this means though. Navigate to means that you're going from one thing to another. But change to usually applies for components when you want to change the state of the component. So that's why I made you guys type in state, because that's the actual terminology, is your first variant is in a particular state, like it's unfilled, and your second one is a particular state. So if you want that state to change, we're going to say the action is change to, and it's going to be filled. So when the unfilled is clicked, it's going to change to filled. But we want the filled to change to unfilled as well when it's clicked. Say that we want that. So we're going to click on the unfilled. We're going to see the blue node. We're going to blue plus sign. We're going to drag it up to create that little purple arrow again. So now you should be able to see both. Your first interaction, if you look at my screen, should say on tap, change to filled. And the second interaction should start from the filled and should be on tap, change to unfilled. Both of these should have smart animate so that it looks cool as it expands out because we had that circle and we wanted to expand out the circle, right? And the curve, I'm just going to say ease out, but you can play with a bunch of other settings. And we don't need to reset scroll position for this. So that's all the things you need to know. Just a quick summary of all the other triggers. Say that I do want it to change while hovering. I'll just show you an example. I can set this one to while hovering and you will see the change. So I'm just going to set this one to while hovering just to show you what that does. So now that I've done this in my component, this change is reflected in the child. Remember, components and instances have a parent-child relationship. Whatever is done to the parent reflects exactly on the child. So we're going to go back to our actual home screen, and we're going to click on the little mini player, load it up, and if you see, just by hovering, it's changing. So when I hover, it's changing. And when I click, it's changing back, but it's changing again because on tap, it changes to the unfilled, but the hover is still happening, right? So I just did that to show you guys an example. And the smart animators is what making that little circle expand. So I used the same ellipse to expand it, right? So that's the thing. Like I could have just deleted the circle and changed it to like change the fill state maybe. But instead of doing that, I expanded the entire ellipse. And I'm just gonna change this back to on click because I just want to show you guys an example. So on tap, now if I click on it, it changes. Let me do that again. Reload. And hover state is still active. Maybe just close it out and try it again. Hmm. Okay, I don't know why it's doing that. Should be on tap. Okay, I will check it. I think my file is not loaded yet, but it should work. It should be on tap about the interactions. So right about time. Any questions? I tried to cover 3 topics in one class, just high level of everything. Um, if you have any questions, we will stay back. Thank you so much for attending our entire Figma workshop series, not just this class. Dylan and I had the pleasure of teaching you guys, and we want feedback, please, so that if we decide to do this and continue this, we can improve it every year. So please, please scan this, give us feedback for all of the classes. It doesn't have to be just this class. Dylan wants to say something.
Nope.
Oh,
Mainly just thank you guys for coming. Please do leave feedback, like she was saying. Um, they'll definitely be using any feedback you guys leave to improve this class in the future.
we're gonna miss you guys. I remember some names that I've seen frequently, so thank you for coming.
As always, if you have any questions, feel free to stay behind and ask.
Oh, there's one question. Do we need a final project to submit? If you're asking about the certification, you don't really have to submit anything, I think. You just, as long as your work is there on the file, I think UX Club might send you an email with more instructions, so keep a lookout for that. But yeah, design-wise, just make sure your progress is on this file. That's all.
Yeah, so with that, like we initially had a requirement to turn in a project, and we'll probably make that less strict. So if you do have a project to turn in and you have like your own version of this app, feel free to do that whenever they send you an email for a submission link. But if you don't, then we'll just be looking through your Figma stuff and making sure that you actually followed along with everything and understand all the material we taught.
Yes, correct.